It started with the sound of her laughter, sharp, bright, and directed at someone who wasn't me. The kind of laugh I hadn't heard in months, maybe years. I was staring at the foam on my untouched latte, pretending I didn't notice the way her hand brushed against his arm, or how she tilted her head just slightly toward him, like he was telling the most fascinating story on earth. Every second felt like sandpaper against my nerves. I wasn't even part of the conversation anymore. I was an extra, some irrelevant background actor in a movie about Camille and her new favorite colleague. I watched her sip her coffee, her eyes lighting up when he spoke, and I realized something I'd been avoiding for a long time. She wasn't just distracted, she was gone. I tried to chime in. I asked a question about their project, something to feel included. She glanced at me with this polite smile, the kind you give to strangers you'll never see again. And then she turned back to him like I'd never opened my mouth. That's when I felt the shift inside me. Not anger, not jealousy, but something heavier. It was the weight of knowing I no longer mattered. I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping loudly on the floor. They both looked up for a split second, surprised, as I said, "Enjoy your coffee," and walked out. My voice cracked on the last word. I didn't wait for her to follow. The street outside was loud, cars honking, people rushing by, but it felt eerily silent to me. I leaned against a cold brick wall, my heart thudding like it was trying to escape my chest. I half expected her to come out, but minutes passed. Nothing. Just the sound of my own breathing and the faint echo of their laughter inside the cafe. I started walking, no idea where I was going. My hands were trembling, and I hated myself for caring this much. I wanted to scream, to break something, but instead, I just kept moving. And then, out of nowhere, my phone buzzed. Her name flashed on the screen. The message was short. "Leo, wait. Please, I need to talk to you." I stared at it for a long time. Part of me wanted to delete it, to keep walking and never look back. But another part, some weak, pathetic part, still needed to know why she let me slip away so easily. When I got home, the apartment felt colder than usual, like it already knew what I was about to find out. I tossed my keys on the table and sat there in silence, staring at the faint scratches on the wooden surface, the ones we made years ago during a wine-fueled game night. I thought about how many nights we'd sat here laughing, arguing, talking about dreams that now felt like someone else's story. Tonight, there was no laughter, just silence, heavy and sharp. Her footsteps in the hallway broke the stillness. Camille walked in slowly, almost carefully, like she was entering a room with broken glass on the floor. She didn't even take off her coat. Her face was pale, but her eyes, God, her eyes were still glowing from that cafe. And it wasn't because of me. "Leo," she started, her voice soft but strained. "You just left." I didn't know what to say. "You didn't have to say anything," I replied, my voice low and shaking despite my effort to sound calm. "You said enough when you couldn't even look at me while he was there." She flinched, but instead of denying it, she sat down across from me. That silence returned, stretching between us like a rope ready to snap. I wanted her to say something, to explain, to apologize, anything that would tell me I wasn't crazy for feeling like I was losing her. But when she finally opened her mouth, the words that came out were worse than silence. "Leo, I didn't realize how much I needed someone to listen to me. Mark," the name cut through me like a blade. She froze, realizing what she'd said, but it was too late. I stood up so fast my chair nearly tipped over. "You needed someone to listen?" I snapped, my voice louder than I intended. "What do you think I've been doing for 6 years? I've been here, Camille. I've been trying." "And all you needed was him?" Her eyes welled up, and for a split second, I saw the woman I married, the one who used to look at me like I was the only person in the room. But now, that look was gone, replaced by guilt and something I couldn't name. She reached into her bag and pulled out her phone, placing it on the table between us. "You should read this," she whispered. I didn't want to. I didn't want to touch it, didn't want to know what messages were hiding there like landmines waiting to blow up my life. But my hand moved on its own, and when I unlocked her screen, I saw it. Not just messages with Mark, but pictures. Smiles, inside jokes, late-night conversations that I didn't even know were happening. And then, the worst part, one message from her to him, sent just yesterday, that read, "I wish Leo understood me the way you do." My stomach dropped. I couldn't breathe. I put the phone down, my hands shaking so badly I could barely keep my voice steady when I said, "So that's it. I'm just not enough anymore?" Camille covered her face with her hands, and for a moment, I couldn't tell if she was crying or just trying to hide from the truth. I don't remember sitting back down, but suddenly I was there, at that same table, staring at her like she was a stranger. My throat felt tight, and I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. "How long?" I asked finally. It wasn't just a question, it was a plea. I needed to know when she stopped being mine. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stared at the wall behind me, as if the truth was written there, and she couldn't bring herself to read it out loud. I could feel every second stretch like a rubber band about to snap. "It started with late-night brainstorming sessions," she said finally, her voice quiet but steady. "Then, talking about life, our frustrations, our dreams." He listened. He made me feel like I was someone worth paying attention to again. The words sliced me open. "And I don't? I've been right here, Camille, every single day. I've been paying attention." My voice cracked in the middle, but I didn't care. I was too busy feeling the floor beneath us crumble. "You stopped," she whispered, so soft I almost missed it. "We stopped. It's like we've just been existing next to each other instead of living together. I tried to talk to you, but—" I cut her off, slamming my palm onto the table. "So your solution is him? That guy with his stupid perfect hair and fake smiles? Do you know how humiliating it was, sitting there watching you throw away every ounce of respect you had for me, just to laugh at his damn jokes?" She flinched but didn't fire back. And somehow, that hurt even worse. I wanted her to fight for me, for us. Instead, she just sat there, wringing her hands like a scared child. "Leo, I don't know what I'm doing. I didn't plan for this to happen. But it feels like we're both suffocating." I stood up, unable to stay still. I paced the room, my eyes darting from our wedding photo on the wall to the wine glasses we used last week when we promised to have a date night, trying to pretend nothing was wrong. Everything felt like a lie now. I grabbed the photo and stared at it. We looked so happy, so stupidly happy. "Were you texting him while we were sitting on that couch watching movies last weekend? Were you thinking about him when you kissed me goodnight?" I asked, my voice low but laced with anger. She didn't answer, and the silence was worse than any confession. Finally, I threw the photo back on the shelf and sat down across from her again. "I want the truth, Camille, all of it. No more half answers, no more, I don't know. Did you cross the line with him?" Her face went pale. She looked down, her hands trembling on her lap. And when she finally spoke, her words felt like a knife twisting in my chest. "There was one night, after work. We kissed. I felt my world tilt sideways. One kiss," she said. But in my mind, it might as well have been 1,000. It wasn't just about the kiss. It was about what it meant, how far gone we already were. I couldn't look at her. My vision blurred, and I realized my hands were shaking. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just sat there, numb, staring at the cracks that had been hiding in our marriage all along. Maybe they'd always been there, but tonight I saw them for the first time. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed with my eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling like it was mocking me. Camille was curled up on her side of the bed, her breathing shallow and uneven, as if even in her dreams she couldn't find peace. I wanted to shake her, to demand she tell me why I wasn't enough anymore, but instead, I just stared at her silhouette, feeling like a stranger had invaded my life. Around 4 a.m., I got up, pacing through the living room, replaying that cafe scene in my head like a broken movie reel. Every laugh, every glance, every second she chose him over me. My hands were trembling, and my chest felt tight, like something was clawing its way out. By the time the sun came up, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to sit around wondering what Mark had that I didn't. I was going to find out. I called in sick to work, though I barely remember what excuse I gave. All I knew was that I had one goal: look Mark in the eye and see what kind of man had managed to pull my wife's attention away from me. Finding him wasn't hard. I knew the cafe they liked, the one Camille kept mentioning in passing. I parked across the street, watching the front door like some pathetic amateur detective. I must have sat there for an hour, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly they were white. And then, like clockwork, he appeared. Mark, tall, effortlessly confident, that annoyingly casual look that screamed, "I'm better than you without even trying." My stomach twisted. Before I could overthink it, I got out of my car and walked straight toward him. He noticed me halfway across the street, and the look on his face said it all. He knew exactly who I was. He didn't even need an introduction. That infuriated me even more. "Mark, right?" I said, my voice colder than I intended. "We need to talk." He didn't look surprised. In fact, he smiled. "Leonard, I assume? Camille's husband." He said my name like it was a joke. I felt my blood boil. "Stay away from her," I snapped. "Whatever game you think you're playing, it ends now. She's my wife." Mark didn't flinch. He just tilted his head, like he was analyzing me, and said, "Is she? Because from what I've seen, she doesn't look very happy being your wife. Maybe you should ask yourself why she feels like she can't talk to you." That hit me like a punch to the gut. For a moment, I just stood there, my fists clenching and unclenching. I wanted to hit him, but deep down, I knew he wasn't wrong. That's what made it so much worse. "You think you know her?" I spat. "You've known her for what, a few months? Try being there when things aren't easy. Try being the one holding everything together while she forgets you exist." Mark's expression softened slightly, but it wasn't pity. It was arrogance. "Look, I'm not the villain here. She's an incredible woman. Maybe you forgot how to see that." I froze. His words echoed in my head, and for a terrifying second, I wondered if he was right. Had I taken her for granted? Or was that just his way of justifying crossing the line? I didn't wait for an answer. I turned and walked away, my heart pounding like I'd just run a marathon. When I got home, Camille was sitting on the couch, her phone in her lap. She looked up at me with this cautious expression, like she could sense what I'd just done. I didn't say anything at first. I just stood there, trying to breathe. Finally, I muttered, "I talked to him." Her face went pale. "Leo, why would you—" "Because I had to," I interrupted, my voice shaking. "Because I needed to hear it from him, Camille. Do you have any idea how humiliating it is to feel like I'm losing you to someone who barely knows you?" She stared at me for a long time, her eyes filling with tears. "Oh, Leo, I'm not sure what I feel anymore," she said softly. And that broke me more than anything Mark had said. That night, I felt like I was living in a house filled with ghosts. Camille moved around silently, avoiding my gaze, and every time our eyes met, it was like she was looking at me through a fog. I hated it, hated how small I felt, how powerless I'd become. I wasn't just losing her, I was losing myself. I told myself I wouldn't snoop, that I'd never be that guy. But by midnight, I was sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at her phone on the nightstand, like it was some cursed artifact that held every answer I needed. She was asleep, or at least pretending to be. I reached for it. My hand shook as I unlocked it with the code I'd known for years. I thought I was prepared for what I'd find, but I was wrong. The messages with Mark weren't just casual chatter. They were filled with moments, tiny, intimate pieces of her I hadn't seen in years. Late-night jokes about how Leonard never notices when I cut my hair. Comments about my stupid habits, the ones I thought she found endearing, and then a voice note. I hesitated, but I pressed play, her voice soft and warm, saying, "I don't know what's happening, but when I talk to you, I feel alive again. I haven't felt that in so long." I swear my heart stopped. I couldn't breathe. I just sat there, listening to her confess feelings she hadn't shared with me in years, to another man. I put the phone back, careful not to wake her, but I couldn't sleep. Instead, I walked around the apartment like a ghost myself, my mind spinning. The next day, I took off work again. I couldn't face anyone. I needed to think, but every thought circled back to one question. When did we start falling apart? Maybe it was when her career started taking off. Or maybe it was me, my complacency, my inability to keep up with her. All I knew was that she'd found something in Mark that I'd lost, and I hated myself for letting that happen. I wasn't planning to follow her, but when she left for another team meeting, I grabbed my keys. I drove behind her at a distance, every nerve in my body on fire. She didn't notice. She pulled into a small parking lot near an art gallery I'd never seen before. I waited in my car, my palms sweaty on the steering wheel, and then I saw him, Mark, already waiting by the entrance. I watched them hug, not just a polite hug, but the kind of hug that lasts a second too long. It felt like my stomach had been ripped open. I wanted to storm over there, to scream, but I couldn't move. Instead, I pulled out my phone and took a picture. Not because I needed proof, no, I already knew, but because some sick part of me wanted to hold on to that moment of betrayal, like it would fuel the anger I needed to confront her. When she came home that evening, I didn't say anything at first. I let her talk about her meeting, every word like a dagger. Finally, I asked, "Was Mark there?" She froze, just for a split second, but I saw it. That hesitation. That lie. Yes, she said carefully. He's part of the team, Leo. I showed her the photo, her face drained of color. Why were you there? She asked, her voice trembling. Because I don't trust you anymore, I replied, and my voice cracked under the weight of it. And I think you don't trust me either. She didn't answer. She just stood there, tears filling her eyes, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered that hug, that voice note, and my chest filled with fire again. That night, she slept on the couch. I lay awake in our bed, staring at the ceiling, my mind spinning with one thought. I wasn't going to lose her without a fight, but I also wasn't sure if there was even anything left to fight for. The next morning, I woke up to an empty apartment. Camille had already left. No note, no text, nothing. The silence in the house was deafening, and it made me realize just how far apart we'd drifted. I sat at the kitchen table for what felt like hours, staring at my cold coffee, my mind replaying every word of that voice note I'd heard on her phone. I could almost hear her whispering to him, and the sound was like poison in my veins. I wasn't going to just sit around waiting for my marriage to crumble. I needed to know how deep this rabbit hole went. I don't know what possessed me, but I drove to her office. I parked across the street, heart pounding like I was about to commit a crime. I watched her through the glass windows of the lobby. She looked so different, smiling, laughing, glowing in a way I hadn't seen in months. And then he appeared, Mark, walking beside her with that same effortless charm, his hand almost brushing hers. They weren't just colleagues, and I knew it. I could feel it in my gut. Something inside me snapped. I got out of the car and followed them. I didn't care how it looked. They walked into a nearby building, some boutique workspace with a cafe on the ground floor. I stood outside like a shadow, watching them through the glass. They were sitting close, leaning in, heads almost touching as they whispered and laughed. She didn't look like my wife. She looked like a woman I didn't know anymore, like someone who'd already left me emotionally and just hadn't said it out loud yet. I took out my phone and started recording. I didn't even know why. Maybe I wanted proof. Maybe I wanted something I could show her when she denied what I was seeing. But as I stood there, a wave of shame washed over me. What had I become? Some desperate, pathetic guy spying on his own wife because he couldn't face the truth? But I couldn't stop. I couldn't walk away. I must have been standing there for 20 minutes when they both suddenly looked toward the window. I froze. Camille's face changed instantly, her smile dropping as she spotted me. Mark turned too, his expression hardening like he was ready to confront me. My blood went cold. I turned and walked away before either of them could come outside. My heart was racing so fast I could barely breathe by the time I reached my car. When Camille came home that night, she didn't even try to pretend anymore. She walked straight in, her face pale and tight, and said, "Leo, we need to talk." Her tone wasn't soft or apologetic. It was sharp, almost defensive, like I was the one who'd done something wrong. "You were following me," she said, her arms crossed. "I saw you outside the cafe." "Because you're lying to me," I snapped, my voice breaking. "You think I don't see it? The way you look at him? Do you even realize what you're doing to me, Camille? Do you even care?" She stared at me, her lips trembling, but she didn't deny it. That silence. It told me everything I needed to know. She finally said, "Leo, I don't know what's happening between us anymore. I'm confused. I need space to figure this out." Space? After everything she wanted space? I laughed, but it wasn't out of humor. It was bitter, broken laughter. "You don't want space," I said quietly. "You want him." She didn't answer. She just walked into the bedroom and closed the door, leaving me standing there like an idiot. I sat on the couch that night, staring at the door, wondering how long I'd been blind to this. Maybe I'd been losing her for years, and I just didn't want to see it, but something inside me shifted that night. If she thought she could quietly drift away into someone else's arms while I just sat and watched, she was wrong. I wasn't going to let this end without knowing the full truth. If it meant digging up every secret, every lie she'd buried, then so be it. The following day, I woke up on the couch with my neck aching and my head pounding like I'd been hit by a truck. Camille had already left, again. No goodbye, no explanation, just gone. I sat there, staring at the ceiling, feeling like a fool in my own home. It wasn't anger anymore. It was this deep, heavy weight pressing on my chest, a feeling I couldn't shake no matter how hard I tried. I couldn't go on like this, stuck in the dark while she slipped further away. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to wait for her to hand them to me. That's when I noticed it, her laptop on the kitchen counter. She never left it behind. My stomach tightened as I stared at it. I told myself not to touch it, that it was crossing a line, but I'd already crossed so many lines that it almost didn't matter anymore. My hands were trembling as I opened it, half expecting it to demand a password I didn't know, but to my shock, it opened without hesitation. At first, there was nothing unusual. Emails, work documents, the usual clutter of someone too busy to clear their desktop. But then, I saw a folder buried deep in the documents, hidden under layers of random files. It was called Moments. My heart sank. It wasn't a work folder. I knew that immediately. I clicked on it. The first thing I saw were photos, some innocent, others not so much. Camille and Mark at the office, laughing over coffee, their faces so close it made my skin crawl. A picture of them at what looked like a bar, her hand on his shoulder. And then there were screenshots of their messages, saved like they were something worth remembering. It was all there, every piece of evidence I didn't want to find. But that wasn't the worst part. Buried in the folder was a video file. My hands shook as I clicked it. The screen filled with the image of my wife, my Camille, smiling at her phone camera in a way she hadn't smiled at me in years. "Hey you," she said softly, her voice dripping with warmth. I don't know, I can't stop thinking about last night. You make me feel like I'm alive again." I stopped the video before it finished, my stomach twisting like I was going to throw up. I slammed the laptop shut and stumbled back, breathing hard. I felt like the walls were closing in on me. All this time, I'd been begging for scraps of her attention while she was giving every piece of herself to him. It wasn't just emotional anymore. It was real, physical. And I was the idiot who hadn't seen it coming. I don't remember how long I sat there, staring at that closed laptop. But when Camille came home later, I was still in the same spot. She looked at me, her face instantly wary, like she knew something was wrong. "Leo," she said carefully. "What's going on?" "I know," I said, my voice hoarse. Just 2 words, but they made her freeze. I could see the panic flicker across her face. "I saw it all, Camille. The pictures, the video. You think I'm that blind? You think I wouldn't find out?" Her eyes filled with tears instantly, but I didn't know if they were tears of guilt or anger that I'd looked through her things. "Leo, you went through my laptop," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Don't you dare turn this on me," I snapped. "Don't you dare make me the bad guy here. You've been lying to me, sneaking around with him while I sit here thinking we're just going through a rough patch. Do you even realize what you've done to me? What you've done to us?" She didn't answer. She just stood there, silent, her tears falling as if words were pointless now. And maybe they were, because at that moment, I wasn't sure if anything she could say would change the fact that the person I loved most had shattered me into pieces. That night, I didn't sleep again. But I made a decision. If Camille wanted to destroy what we had, I needed to hear her admit it. I needed to confront this thing head on. No more secrets, no more waiting for her to choose. I was going to find out exactly what she felt for Mark, and I wasn't going to like the answer. The next morning, I felt like I'd aged 10 years overnight. My chest was heavy, but something inside me was finally steady, like I'd crossed a line where I either fight for what we had or let it burn to ashes. I didn't want to hate her. I didn't want to live in this toxic fog anymore. If there was even a tiny chance of fixing us, I needed to know. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and waited for her to come out of the bedroom. When she finally walked in, her eyes were red from crying, and she looked at me like I was a stranger. "Leo, I don't know what to say," she whispered. "Then say the truth," I said. "Everything. No more excuses, no more hiding. Do you want to be with me, or do you want him?" She flinched at the question, but I could see the storm in her eyes. She sat down across from me, her hands shaking. "I've been so stupid," she said finally, her voice breaking. "I thought what I was feeling with Mark was real, but it wasn't. It was just escape. I was scared because I felt like we'd lost each other. But when I saw you walk out of that cafe, Leo, it hit me. You're the only one who's ever been there for me. I don't want to lose you." I didn't say anything at first. I just stared at her, trying to figure out if I could believe her. The pain was still raw, but there was something in her voice, something I hadn't heard in a long time, that made me pause. "You don't get to say that unless you mean it," I said quietly. "If we're doing this, it's all or nothing. I can't live in half-truths anymore, Camille. I love you, but I can't keep fighting alone." She reached across the table, her hand trembling as it touched mine. "Then let's fight together," she whispered. "No more lies. I'll cut off all contact with him. I'll delete everything. We can go to counseling, whatever it takes. I want you back, Leo." For the first time in weeks, I felt a tiny flicker of hope. Maybe it was foolish, maybe I should have walked away, but something in me wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. I nodded slowly. "If we do this, we start over. We burn it all down and rebuild from scratch. You with me?" She nodded, tears streaming down her face, and for the first time in months, she smiled, really smiled at me. The next few days weren't easy. We talked more than we had in years, long, messy conversations that left us both drained but lighter. She deleted Mark's number in front of me, erased the photos, and promised to earn back my trust. And for once, I believed her. Last weekend, we went back to that same cafe. No colleagues, no tension, just the two of us. It was awkward at first, but then something shifted. She laughed at one of my dumb jokes, really laughed, and I realized that maybe we hadn't lost everything after all. Maybe we were just finding our way back. As we left the cafe, she slipped her hand into mine like she used to, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a ghost in my own life. I felt like Leonard again, the man she chose.